What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to basically begin our coverage over the Eternals, the 2021 series. And the reason why, because this was actually a very good book, but on top of that, this series right here was technically another building block towards a crossover event that was done last year known as Judgment Day, or Axe Judgment Day. And of course, when it comes to our X-Men coverage, that event right there is actually very important. Now, with that being said, it's also very important for the Eternals as well. But this book is technically the death of the Eternals. Yes, you heard that right, the death of the Eternals. So a couple years ago, we had the death of the Inhumans, and technically right now we have the death of the Eternals. Not completely, but you do have a good portion of the Eternals technically being killed off left and right. But we also see the return of Thanos as well, to kind of begin the process of using the character once again for some big evil plan to happen down the road. So this is Eternals Volume 1, Part 1. And so to begin today's storyline, we actually do pick up with the return of Icarus. Now, the reason why I say the return, because the last time we saw the Eternals, they all got killed off. Now, of course, when it comes to the Eternals, they're basically like the mutants right now. They have a way to come back to life. Now, matter of fact, the Eternals had that concept first before the mutants did. Now, with that being said though, when they all had died, they were all brought back to life in this storyline. But Icarus is the last one to come back to life. And the reason why, because he was the last one to die. Now, with that being said, we also kind of find out that somebody is actually narrating this storyline. And of course, it's known as the Machine. See, the Machine is a newer concept in Marvel Comics. Not completely new, it's almost 20 years old, but it is newer than the Eternals. Now, with that being said, the Machine is basically an AI system that lives throughout the entire Earth. But at the same time, it does control other machines the Eternals use as a way to protect the Earth. Because when it comes to the Eternals, they were technically made by Celestials as a way to protect the Earth, to protect the humans. And so with that being said, you have the Machine right now kind of talking us through the storyline. Now, with that being said though, when it comes to Icarus, he's now back to life once again, but he's also been called by Zuras. Now, when it comes to Zuras, he's basically the man in charge of the Eternals. And right now, he does have a very important task for Icarus. And so, of course, you do have Icarus right now fly over to actually see Zuras. And so when it comes to their meeting, we actually do get reminded of a particular concept, better known as the excluded. See, the excluded is actually a concept where technically you have few Eternals who are locked away for mistakes they made over the years as the Eternals were protecting the Earth. And so if you ever do break a law, break a rule, or you made some huge mistake, you are better known as a excluded, and you are locked away in that particular area to most time never come back. Now, sometimes you can come back, but most times you don't. But when it comes to Zuras, it's Zuras right now telling our friend Icarus it's about time to go ahead and release a particular person. Now, as soon as Zuras tells Icarus who to release, Icarus is right now very scared about the idea of who he is actually releasing. And we kind of find out the person he had to release is actually Sprite. Now, when it comes to Sprite, she was actually a boy. And what I mean by that is sometimes Eternals will go through a change. Now, this change can only happen every 20 to 25,000 years. Either way though, when it came to Sprite, she is, or was a boy, but she is technically a young child who will be a young child forever. That's how she was made when she came eternal. Now, with that being said, when it comes to Sprite, if she ever gets bored, she will basically do a lot of bad things to entertain herself, to make things more interesting. Now, here's the thing though, because right now Sprite wants to go down to Earth. And the reason why, because for her mind right now, she has not seen the Earth in a very long time, even though in previous storylines in Marvel's timeline, she literally seen the Earth maybe a few months ago or a few years ago. But the reason why she thinks that she's been gone for so long, because when you come back to life, they have to use your last backup. And so when it came to her last backup, that last backup died many years ago, way before the humans were able to evolve on Earth. And so of course for this backup, it's kind of like, yeah, the last thing I remember was none of this. And so of course when she does head over to New York, she is going to be somewhat impressed of how far the human race had technically evolved. And of course, when Sprite actually goes down to Earth, she's very impressed in what she sees. To her mindset, this is a very huge improvement. But at the same time though, technically her last backup is so many years old that technically it's kind of like, yes, this is a huge improvement for you. But for other Eternals, this right here is just yesterday. Either way right now, when it comes to the Eternals, or Icarus and also Sprite, they are actually confronted by Iron Man. And Iron Man usually does have close ties to the Eternals for a whole lot of different reasons. And basically right now, this is just Iron Man making sure that everything is okay with the Eternals. And the reason why, because like I said earlier, there was a previous event where technically the Eternals all died. And so right now it's Iron Man saying, hey, I'm just making sure everything's okay. And oh, by the way, why is Sprite a girl now? Because when I last saw her, or him, he was a boy. Now he's a girl. What's going on? And of course, you have Icarus say every 20 or 25,000 years, basically Eternal can change their appearance. And that was Sprite did technically. But then out of nowhere, they do get a certain kind of call. And this call says excess deviation, which means that right now they have to deal with a certain kind of situation. So of course you have Iron Man leave, but you do have our two heroes, Icarus and of course Sprite, go handle this certain problem that only Eternals can actually handle. And we kind of find out that technically the reason why the alarm went off because there is a deviant problem. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to Marvel Comics, you had 3 different races that were technically made when it came to the Celestials when they first arrived on the Earth. Of course, you had the humans, and you also had the Eternals, but you also had the Deviants. Unfortunately though, when it came to the Deviants, they're kind of like the wrongfully mutated people of the Earth. And so of course, with that being said, most of them technically stay underground. Now, here's the thing. The Eternals and also the Deviants are sometimes in a endless war, but at the same time though, the Eternals make sure the Deviants stay in their place, meaning that do not try to do anything bad that could cause problems for the human race, but also for the Earth. And so right now, this Deviant right here is basically trying to do some bad things. And so that means our heroes have to step in. So you do have Icarus and also Sprite work together to actually defeat this one particular Deviant, and then they're able to actually move on with their day. And this is where technically we get into the huge problem of this storyline. And what I mean by that is we actually do pick up right now with Icarus and also Sprite arriving to Olympus. Of course, this is one of the many homes of the Eternals. But the problem is though, when they do arrive back to Olympus, they are actually confronted by another character known as Phastos. Or Phastos. I want to say it's Phastos. Either way, you do have Phastos right now tell both Icarus and also Sprite the horrible news that Zuras has been killed. And this is very huge because when it comes to the Eternals, he was the man in charge. He was the prime Eternal, and now he's been killed off. But the thing is, it seemed like someone had crushed his skull. But the question is right now, what are they going to do next? And that is the moment where our heroes are technically confronted by, of course, Durig. Now, Durig is kind of like the Loki of the Eternals. He's always up to something. Now, with that being said, though, he technically tell our heroes, Icarus and also Sprite, that what they're going to do next is wait for the resurrection of Zuras. Because once he does come back to life, he'll be able to actually tell us who killed him off. Now, of course, like I said earlier, Icarus does not trust Durig at all because technically he is a snake. Now, with that being said, though, you actually do have most of the Eternals right now believe that Sprite was the one who must have killed off Zuras. Now we know, and Icarus knows, that Sprite is technically innocent. And the reason why, because he was actually with, of course, Icarus when they're on the Earth. But the thing is, though, when it comes to the Eternals, they're kind of like, no, we cannot trust Sprite at all. Because when it came to a previous storyline, it was Sprite who technically was the reason why all the Eternals had died. But on top of that, though, Zuras was the one who actually did kill off Sprite in the last incident. And so right now, technically, when it comes to all Eternals, they feel like Sprite must have been the one to kill off Zuras as a way to get revenge. Now, when it comes to Icarus, he's not okay with just sitting around and waiting for Zuras to come back to life. And so he says, I'm gonna follow a trail to figure out who was the one who came here last and killed off Zuras. And so you have Icarus as a machine. Did anybody use the teleporters recently? And the machine said yes, but unfortunately, the machine cannot tell him who it was. Apparently, it was someone who is unknown to her system. And so right now, it's Icarus right now wondering, where did they go to after they had killed off Zuras? And so, of course, right now you have Sprite and also Icarus follow the trail of the teleporters to figure out where did the potential murderer go to. And so we do see Icarus and Sprite actually go over to Titanos. Now, when it comes to Titanos, this used to be the home of the Eternals. Now, of course, by this point, it no longer is. It's technically right now in ruins. But of course, when it comes to Icarus and Sprite, when the person who had killed off Zuras, they had used the teleporter and came over here. And so right now, it's Icarus hoping to find that person somewhere here on Titanos and to hopefully arrest them or to hopefully kill them off. But the thing is, though, while you have Icarus and Sprite right now traveling through Titanos, well, that is the moment where you actually have Icarus see some kind of vision, where apparently in the future, he is going to fail a young boy known as Toby, who dies 13 years old. And apparently, when it comes to Toby, Icarus was supposed to protect Toby, but somehow Toby died. And apparently, Icarus feels very bad about that in the future. Now, here's the thing, though, because right now, present day, Icarus has no idea who Toby is. And so right now, it's Icarus wondering, who is Toby and why would I care so much for Toby? But then out of nowhere, you have somebody say, oh great, more Eternals. This is just dumb, it's stupid, it's time for me to go ahead and kill off all the Eternals. And when Icarus turns around, he is actually confronted by no other than Thanos himself. And so when we get into the second chapter of the storyline, we actually do pick up right now with Icarus fighting against Thanos. Now, of course, this is not a fair battle for Icarus at all. And honestly, I felt bad for this dude because this is someone right now who believes that technically he should be able to actually win against Thanos. But in reality, it's like, no, dude, there's no way you'll be able to actually defeat Thanos at all. But on top of that, though, you have no idea how powerful he is. This is actually your first fight between the two of you guys. And so either way, when it comes to their battle, it does go on for a few pages, but you do have Icarus tell Sprite, get out of here. Go get the others, tell them it was Thanos. Thanos was the one who had basically killed off our leader. come back here with reinforcements to help me defeat him. But the thing is though, Sprite realized that if he does leave Icarus behind, Icarus is going to die. But either way, the battle continues on up to a certain moment where technically you have Thanos being able to actually kill off Icarus by ripping off his head just like that. And you're like, oh my God, dude, Icarus, you die, but like you die, my dude. And so for Thanos, it's a win. But then he realized it was actually a trick. Because thanks to Sprite was able to make a construct of course, Icarus, because he realized that Icarus was actually losing the battle against Thanos. And so as the fight went on, Sprite technically replaced the real Icarus with the fake one to get the real Icarus out of there so that he'll be able to survive, but to also get more help down the road to deal with Thanos. Because if Thanos was the killer, then you're gonna need all hands on deck to be able to just stop him. And so you have Sprite grab Icarus and they technically get the heck out of there before Thanos sees them and tries to kill them right then and there. But then we get this flashback, and see, when it comes to this flashback, it's being told to us by the Machine, because remember, the Machine is technically the one right now narrating the storyline for us. And right now your Machine tell us a flashback about Icarus, because when it comes to Icarus, there was also another time where when he was on Titanos, he saw some kind of vision back in the Bronze Age of men. Of course, back in the caveman era of time. Either way though, when it came to this vision, he saw some young boy who was on the coastline just looking out into the ocean. But of course, apparently the boy saw some kind of monster. And so of course, that monster was a deviant. And remember, Eternals are the ones who technically deal with deviants. And this was a true evil deviant. And so with that being said, you had Icarus go down into the world to find that deviant. Unfortunately, when he did arrive, the deviant was not there. Now here's the thing. He does ask the young boy, have you seen the monster? The boy says yes, but he has no idea where the monster actually went to. And so you had Icarus actually ask the young boy to stay here and to basically give him a sign to say, when you do see the monster, please give me a sign so I can come back here and deal with that monster. But here comes the big problem though. The deviant never came back just like that. It took many years. And of course, that boy stayed there. And the reason why, because that was the caveman era of men. And so of course, when that young boy actually saw Icarus, he looked at Icarus as a god, even though Icarus is not a god. And so of course, even though he thought Icarus was a god, he was bound to listen to this supposed god. And so he stayed there on that beach, waiting for that monster to come back to tell Icarus, hey, the deviant is back here. Can you please come here and deal with it? But like I said, the deviant did not come back that quickly. It took many years, to the point where the young boy was now an old man. And on top of that, he had a son who also had a son. But unfortunately, when it came to the boy, the first boy, he was not a family man. He was not even there for his grandkids, because he was doing what, of course, Icarus had told him so many years ago, to stay here to warn me if the deviant does return. And of course, when the deviant comes back, Icarus finds out what he did wrong here. He basically ruined an entire family because he told that boy to stay there on the beach, which he did. But the boy was not a father. The boy was not a grandfather. And so, of course, technically, when it comes to Icarus, he did ruin a whole line of family just for one deviant. But getting back over to the present day, we actually do pick up right now with Icarus and also Sprite going back over to Droog to tell him what happened to them. And of course, they fought against Thanos. Now this is actually very huge. And right now to Icarus, they need to go back to where Thanos is and take care of him. But when it comes to Droog, he's kind of like, no, we are not going to do that at all. We're going to stay right here and wait for Zuras to come back to life. And when he does, then he'll tell us what to do next. That is the right steps we need to take right now. But here comes the big problem though, because then out of nowhere, you do have another Eternal appear. And when this other one does appear, he tells Icarus, Sprite, and of course also Drew that Zuras is not coming back to life at all. And there are two big reasons why. The first is that the Wardens, the one who technically do their work to bring someone back to life, they all have been killed off. But then he said the machines that are technically used to bring someone back to life right now, they don't work right now. The dead is going to stay dead. And that is why I say that technically right now, this is really more saying the Eternals are gonna die. This is the death of the Eternals because now they lost their way to actually come back to life now. And now they also lost their leader. This is how big things are getting right now. But then another character does appear. And that would be Cersei. Now, when it comes to Cersei, she's basically right now playing the neutral zone. And what I mean by that is, yes, Icarus is right technically that right now there should be an army of Eternals trying their best to stop Thanos. But at the same time though, you also have Drew somewhat being right as well. That technically they need to make some kind of master plan on what they're going to do for their community. But at the same time, also make another plan to figure out how to stop Thanos correctly. But when it comes to Cersei though, she's kind of like, no, we are technically right now going to do neither, because right now we technically need to figure out who killed off our leader, who killed off Zuras. And so right now it's her saying, I am going to take Sprite and also Icarus with me. One, because Icarus right now needs to be healed up. But on top of that, I can only have a small circle of people that I actually trust. Now after that, we actually do see Cersei take the small group of characters that she actually trusts to her room. Now of course that will be Icarus and Phastos. Now Sprite is there as well, but here's the thing though. She does not actually trust Sprite. It's just her saying that I want to keep my eye on you to make sure that technically you are not the one behind all this mess that we're going through, because technically the last time it was you. And so right now I want to make sure my eyes can stay on you and basically stop you. Now with that being said, you then have Phastos bring up another problem, and that is the machines. And let me explain. So when it comes to the machines the Eternals use, it technically does live throughout the entire Earth. It keeps the Earth alive. But on top of that, the machines help the Eternals protect the humans. But the problem is right now, the machines are not working, which means that right now the Earth could possibly die. It could also cause storms across the entire world, geostorms. And 1 week they have left to basically get the machines turned back on to hopefully save the Earth. Now, of course, you do have Cersei say, we need to find the traitor fast. Now, here's the thing. They do go with that game plan, but Icarus leaves because right now he wants to handle a different kind of situation. And we kind of find out that technically when it comes to Icarus, he went to go find Toby, because remember, back on Titanos, right before he fought against Thanos, he saw a vision, and that vision basically told him, you are going to grieve in the future over a young boy named Toby. Now again, when it comes to Icarus, he's kind of like, who is Toby? And so that's why he left the group to go find Toby, to see why in the world Toby is going to be so important to him for, and why will he grieve in the future if Toby actually dies. And so right now it's Icarus saying, I want to learn more about Toby, but at the same time, I want to prevent his future. I do not want to see him die as a young boy. We then pick up with another character of the Eternals as we jump into the 3rd chapter, and that will be Athena. Now when it comes to Athena, she's basically one of those Eternals who's always looking for love. And that is her biggest problem right there. And I'll explain more as we go through the book, but technically right now, she's technically an Eternal that always falls in love with a deviant. Even though she tries her best to not fall in love with deviants, she always does. And of course, that is a huge problem because usually deviants are technically the enemies of the Eternals. Either way, right now, we do see her waking up with her lover, of course, another deviant. But then, as soon as she walks outside, she realized that she might have some company very soon. And of course, that company is the Eternals, because right now you have the Eternals coming here to basically question Dina. And the reason why, because she is the daughter of Zuras. And that right there is very huge. And the reason why, because with her being the daughter of Zuras, but also sleeping with the enemy of the Eternals, it looks very bad for her, but also looks very bad for him. And so right now, technically, it's kind of like, we believe that you are the traitor. We believe that technically you are the one who had killed your father off. Now, of course, getting back over to the idea of her being a traitor, they already think that of her, because again, she sleeps with deviants. She's in love with deviants, and deviants are technically enemies of the Eternals. And so right now, technically, when it comes to the Eternals, she already been labeled as a traitor. And so when you take that, but now the death of her father, they're kind of like, yeah, you are the one who killed off Zuras. Now, here's the thing though, she had no idea that her father died. But again, they don't believe her, because she is the daughter of Zuras, who's right now sleeping with the enemy. But apparently the reason why the Eternals believe that she was the one to kill off Zuras, because they had a meeting right before he died. At the end of that meeting, she left, but she expressed how much she hates her father, that she wishes he would be dead, that he dies. And so because of that, it's kind of like, yeah, you may be the one who had actually killed off your father. You could be the traitor. And so then we jump back over to Icarus. Now, when we do, it's technically Icarus right now talking to Toby, but also Toby's parents as well. Because right now they're freaking out. They come outside and they see a floating man who's right now telling them, hey, listen, so I came here to protect your boy because he is going to die very soon. I have no idea how or when, but he is going to die. And that right there would scare any kind of parents at all, with the idea of their child being killed or hurt in some kind of way. And unfortunately, you have no idea how to protect your child from getting hurt or killed in some kind of way. Now, of course, that is the moment where you technically have the area begin to hell. And what I mean by that is we have to remember what we learned earlier. With the machines right now being turned off, of course, the Earth is having a hard time staying alive. And so you're going to have geostorms all over the Earth, including one right here, where it begins to hell in the area. But this hell is not small. This hell is very large. And so, of course, you have Icarus use his powers as a way to protect both the family and other innocent people in the area. But at the same time, it's still the parents wondering what is going to happen to Toby though. And so then we get this flashback. Now, when it comes to this flashback, it does take place 10,000 years in the past, but it's actually very important about the idea of explaining why Athena is actually a bad person. And I don't say a bad person, I really say more bad at picking a lover. And what I mean by that is 10,000 years ago, her and Cersei had a meeting. And when it came to this meeting, they were talking about her latest lover, who was a deviant. And that was a huge problem back then because, again, the Eternals are technically enemies with the deviants. They cannot be together. But with Athena, she's all like, no, I found a deviant I fell in love with, that I truly believe in, and I feel like he is the right one. And so when it comes to Cersei, she's all like, okay, you believe that you found true love. Well, let me show you your errors when it comes to falling in love with a deviant. And so you have Cersei actually take Athena to a random area where there are a bunch of dead bodies. But these dead bodies are missing specific organs. And right now they're floating in a pool of blood. But here comes the big problem though, because it's Athena right now wondering who killed all these different people. And you have Cersei say, it was your lover. Here's the thing, you can live forever. he cannot. And he found that very interesting. And so he tried his best to find different ways to kind of help him live longer and longer so that he'll be able to live with you as long as he can. But he killed innocent people, some of his own people. You cannot tell me a deviant is not evil when they do something like this to their own people. And when he does appear, he agrees, he confirms, he's all like, yeah, I did all of this to be with you longer, but it's so sick and nasty. Either way, you actually have Thena kill off her ex-lover back then because, again, the crimes that he had committed. And she said that she would never fall in love with another deviant. But the thing is, her heart, it craves for love. And unfortunately, when she finds someone who gives her just a small amount of love, she falls for it just like that. And that is a huge difference between her and also Cersei. For Cersei, she finds a guy to just use them for, of course, the nasty stuff. But when it comes to Thena, it's like, no, she wants true love. And unfortunately, she's bad at finding it. But to close on today's video, you actually have Cersei get a call from Droog. Now this call is actually very important. And the reason why, because when she does get a call from him, he gives her bad news. He went back home to Polaris. Now Polaris is one of the many different areas the Eternals live in. But of course, each area has a ruler. And when it came to Droog, his father was the ruler, but the problem is though, his father is dead. But on top of that though, so are other people in the actual area, which means that now technically Droog is the next person in charge of Polaris. But the thing is, whoever killed Zuras must have came here, killed off the king of this area, but at the same time killed off the entire staff and made sure all the machines could not work either. But at the same time though, now is Cersei realizing that Droog is now in charge of Polaris. And this is actually very huge. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.